Alright, so we're finally finishing up the carpet saga and getting the vinyl in 100%. We're also going to be looking at the back of the cab and adding in some sound deadening. Since I get everything out during this process, I figured it was the best idea to knock this out right now to eliminate some of that additional sound traveling through the cab, through the rear of the cab specifically. Also going to add in the mat retainers on both the driver and passenger side to close everything up. In the last video we completely finished up the front, including the seats. Now I'm going to be pulling out the rear liner to prep the rear surface to add in the sound deadening and reduce some of the noise coming into the cab. Before adding the sound deadener to the rear of the cab, I needed to clean the surface to make sure that it adhered properly, so I decided to use acetone and a microfiber cloth to just wipe everything over and make sure that there was no residue or oils stuck on the metal. I didn't want to risk buying the sound deadener online just because I wasn't sure what I was going to get. I went to a local audio shop and found out whatever they used, which was Silencer Inc., and decided to use that for the interior of the vehicle. I was not going to pull everything off of the back of the cab, and a lot of the things you can't really pull off. It has to fit directly against the back of the cab, so you have to cut everything up and add it piece by piece, obviously starting with the largest pieces that you can. The vents are really important in the rear, so make sure that you don't cover them. You need those inside the vehicle. It's also very important that you don't mess with the vents a whole lot. I actually had a leak in the cab before, and one of the causes of the leak was the rear vent cracked and started allowing water to enter the cab. So just be careful around those. cutting a whole lot of small pieces, which might not really be necessary, but you have so much excess depending on how everything's cut and the size of the roll, etc. So I didn't really see a problem with just covering every surface that I could as much as I could. Additionally, you are supposed to use a roller to make sure that everything adheres properly. I was just kind of pressing it in. If you have the opportunity to get a nice roller to actually press everything into the metal and make sure it adheres properly, do that. There was a little gap at the bottom that I decided to try and fill in. This could have been avoided if I just did it all with that larger piece to begin with, but do what you can. Obviously there is a little bit of material from the vinyl flooring that I let curl up in the back slightly so that it creates as much of a lip in the rear for the vinyl also, so that water or whatever you have in there happens to flow straight down. It also allows the rear cover to let things just slide straight down onto the vinyl floor. I did end up covering some of the holes with sound deadener, but I was able to use a screwdriver to just press through those and then get the plugs to go right inside. This back right corner where all the wiring is gave me the most trouble out of anything, just because I couldn't remember how to route the wiring, and the wiring ended up shorter than necessary a few times while I was adding in the subwoofer and the amp. So first thing to take away from this is that you can remove those corner panel things. There's just a little retainer that you have to press together in the top, and you can pull the plastic retainer out. Second thing is that there is a little lip in the rear of the C-pillar where the wiring is supposed to come out. It doesn't just go under like you see right there. It does go to the rear of that panel. passenger side is of course way easier just because you don't have any wiring. It's finally time to get the rear seats back in. This is fairly simple. There's nothing special about it. It's just getting the seats back into the bolt locations. I will tell you that the biggest issues that I ran into here were related to wiring, like I mentioned, and they were trying to figure out how the seat brackets went on, how the seat belt brackets went on, how everything was routed properly, and it just took a while. And I feel like I should have taken more reference photos as I was taking everything apart. I did not go back and look at the video, which I could have done, but I was just kind of in a rush to get everything knocked out. And this whole process took a really long time anyway, so I would have been pouring through hours of video. Just like with the front seats, this seatbelt bracket has a pin that goes down into the floor to make sure that it's located properly. I didn't have that cut out, so then I had to take some time to cut out that little location and get the bracket down in there. Again, be careful because there's wiring all over the place. So here you can very clearly see the gap between the rear cab cover and the C-pillar cover. That's where the wiring goes, not underneath the C-pillar cover. So make sure that you route that properly, because you're going to see me struggle for the next few minutes to actually get everything plugged in. Get the amp plugged in and get the subwoofer plugged in the rear. Since I had to pull the C-pillar cover off again to properly route the wiring, now I run into the issue of having the seat in the way. And this made everything very challenging, so please get it right the first time. Correctly route the wiring in the gap between the rear cab cover and the C-pillar cover. In this whole process, with the front seats and with the rear seats, there are a lot of passenger restraints that you're messing with. Make sure that you're being very careful with this and that you're torquing them properly to make sure that they're routed properly and they don't cause any binding if you were to get into an impact. And also make sure that they're just tight and they're not going to come out. Alright, so there are two challenges with the power inverter. First one being that there is a locator pin on the bottom that you've got to press down in, and there's also the body panel plug that you have to lock into the top over where the jack would go. So yeah, I had to cut a little spot for that to press it in. When you're putting in the passenger side seat, make sure all your connectors are reconnected. I think there were some wires that I disconnected for no reason whatsoever, and you need to make sure that those are hooked back up, and that none of the wires are pinched anywhere, and you're not going to bolt the seat down on top of them. Additionally, the passenger seat is bolted to the floor, but it's also bolted to the driver's side bench seat. So make sure that everything is connected properly. With the seats bolted down, and when I was finally putting this last little plastic trim, or what made the rear underneath the rear seat into a tray, I finally realized that it looks great. The rear seat's pressed down on the back of the vinyl, and it makes everything sit properly, tightens it up, and it really does start to look fantastic. I punched a lot of holes in the back. I had a bunch of little pieces of the vinyl flooring, plastic that was cut up, all over the place. So I decided to vacuum everything up. You'll notice that scrape on the rear where the locating pin for the passenger side front seat was scraping on the floor. Again, just be very careful with that so you don't end up with that in your vehicle. I have put mats down over top of it. These mats do not fit, the Husky ones. What do fit really well are the OEM ones, the OEM Raptor rubber mats. So I ended up, after throwing everything in here, I realized it didn't exactly work out how I wanted it to. So I tossed them and ended up trying to install the OEM mats. I wanted to try and make everything as OE looking as possible, and after a lot of searching around, I was able to find a company that made these retainer clips that could replace basically what Ford has. You can't buy these normally. You have to buy the entire mat, and then you'd have to try and tear it apart. But there are a few companies that sell these. I bought these on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description for where I bought them. The last time I went to go look at them, they didn't have them for sale anymore, but there is an alternate company that looks like they sell the same one, so I'll put both links. I drilled a hole, and then you basically just clip them together, and that's how you add those into the mats. Fairly simple. It just took some time and kind of the willingness to actually cut a hole in your OE mats and also cut holes into the vinyl flooring below. I don't really like the idea of cutting holes into that vinyl flooring, which, by the way, these are OE clips that I'm using right here, just normal OEM Ford clips. I'll also put the part number in the description, and I bought them from Tasca Parts. Every single time I've ordered these, they're like low stock or special order, and they take 2 to 4 weeks to come in. But they're easy to install. You just have to cut the holes in there. Like I said, I didn't want to cut holes. The whole point of the vinyl flooring is that you can it can get wet and you don't have to worry about it, and also you can vacuum up hair really easily. So cutting extra holes does in a way defeat the purpose, but I wanted those retainer clips in there because the mats were just sliding around otherwise. And if necessary, you can seal up those holes underneath using what's essentially like a really strong RTV. I think it's called the good stuff or the best stuff. That I've used it before on CV joints, and it's insane how strong and flexible it is. So I'll use that if necessary in the future, but otherwise you basically just cut these holes. You install the lower clips that secure the mat. Make sure that whenever you install them, the opening that you clip is forward and the closed portion is to the rear, and that way it won't. Otherwise, I installed them backwards on the driver's side at first, and it just, your feet pushing forward will slide the mats right out. Once you get everything installed, it's as simple as throwing the mat on there, and then that's it. Like I said, I did it for both of the front seats. As soon as I get some more of the lower clips in from Tasca Parts, I'll also do it for the rear mat, because the rear mat is sliding around in the back. But hopefully this video helped you if you're reinstalling anything in your vehicle, or you are trying to put some sound deadening in the back. Hopefully it helps. Thanks for watching, and I hope to get some more videos out soon.